My name is Marcus, and my job is to face the darkness so that you, ordinary city dwellers, can sleep soundly, unaware of what creatures roam the night streets. I'm a technician in the City Watch, an elite unit not mentioned in newspapers. We are the last line of defense between this city and those who thirst for its blood. This night was cursed from the beginning. A cold October rain pelted the windows of our armored van, the Cerberus, turning the city lights into blurry watercolor smears. Above the rooftops hung the moon, the first of 3 blood moons foretold by Ilara. Not a true lunar eclipse, but some eerie astronomical whim that made the disk of the luminary seem bloated and colored like congealed blood. It was quite a sight, even for us, who were used to strange occurrences. All systems nominal, Marcus. Victor's voice, our commander, cut through the rain and static in my earpiece. Victor was a veteran of veterans, his face like a mask of granite resilience, but an unfamiliar shadow flickered in his eyes tonight. Thermal imagers, Argus 7 operational, perimeter motion sensors active. Silver bullets engraved with consecrated runes loaded into Predator assault rifles. Just how you like it, Chief. Scout drones Eye of Horus ready for launch, I rattled off, my fingers flying across the sensory panel of my tactical computer. Only thing is, shortwave interference is stronger than usual. Something's flooding the airwaves, and it's not a radio station. Ilara, our mystic and historian, sitting opposite me, wrapped herself tighter in her cloak, embroidered with silver threads forming protective symbols. Her slender fingers toyed with a bone amulet. It's the moon, Marcus. It amplifies them. And our fears. Our fears won't stop them, but a couple of pure silver magazines might, I grumbled, though there was a grain of truth in her words. With each blood moon, our targets were becoming more unpredictable. We were headed for an abandoned subway sector beneath the old industrial district, a perfect place for a werewolf den. According to a tip-off from one of our informants, a new, unusually aggressive pack had taken root there. Our recent sorties had resulted in heavy losses. 2 of our best operatives, Sam and Ripley, had died last week. These creatures seemed to have learned to anticipate our moves, bypass traps. The Cerberus stopped half a mile from the tunnel entrance, disguised as an abandoned warehouse. We disembarked, Victor, Ilara, myself, and 3 other operatives. Jackson, a bruiser with a heavy machine gun loaded with silver hollow-point bullets, and the twins Diego and Sofia, masters of silent infiltration, armed with crossbows with special tranquilizer darts. For when we needed a tongue. The rain instantly drenched our tactical uniforms. The air was thick and smelled of wet earth, rust, and something else. A wild, musky scent that always made the hairs on my neck stand on end. The smell of the beast. Marcus. Eye of Horus for recon. Ilara, your wards at the entrance. The rest of you with me. Combat formation wedge, Victor commanded. His voice, amplified by his tactical helmet, sounded confident, but I detected the steel notes of tension within it. I released the drone, a little silent dragonfly with night vision cameras and a thermal sensor. The image transmitted to my wrist display. The tunnels were dark and damp as expected. But soon the drone detected movement. Not 1, not 2. A dozen thermal signatures huddled in the old control room. Large, very large. Chief, there are at least a dozen of them, and they're waiting, I reported. On the screen, one of the figures suddenly raised its head and looked directly into the drone's lens, even though it was in stealth mode and flying 15 feet up. Impossible. Unless... "They know we're here?" Ilara gasped. Her amulet on her neck began to pulse faintly. Our defenses, they're weakening, and then all hell broke loose. From the darkness of the tunnel, with a roar that made our ears pop, burst forth not just werewolves. These were monsters nearly 8 feet tall, covered in coarse black fur, with eyes burning with crimson fire. Their claws left inch-deep gouges on the concrete walls. They moved with incredible speed and coordination, unlike the ordinary werewolves we were used to putting down. "Fire!" Victor yelled, being the first to open fire. Silver bullets tore into their hides, causing fountains of black, steaming blood, but didn't stop the creatures as quickly as they should have. Jackson unleashed a barrage of fire from his machine gun, but one of the monsters, incredibly agile, dodged and leaped at him, knocking him off his feet. A horrific crunch echoed. Diego and Sophia acted in unison, firing darts, but the werewolves seemed to know in advance where they were aiming. One of them swatted Sophia's dart away with a paw and lunged at her. Diego managed to push his sister aside, but was himself struck. I fired, changing magazines. My predator grew hot. Every bullet found its mark, but the creatures kept coming. They weren't just attacking. They were using tactics, cutting us off from the exit, funneling us into narrow passages. This wasn't animalistic frenzy, but a cold, calculating mind. "Retreat! To the exit!" Victor yelled, covering us with fire. Ilara muttered incantations. Her hands glowed with a faint blue light, creating a flickering barrier that momentarily held back the onslaught. But the barrier groaned under the blows of clawed paws. I saw another one of our operatives fall, Carter, his scream silenced too quickly. We were losing people, and these creatures seemed impervious to pain. At one point, a werewolf broke through to me. A massive clawed maw snapped an inch from my face. I slammed the butt of my rifle into its snout, recoiled, and unloaded the rest of my magazine into its chest. It howled and fell, but immediately another took its place. Victor grabbed my arm. "Marcus, let's go. That's an order." His face was streaked with blood. Not his own, thank God. And an expression of fury and despair was etched upon it. We were losing. For the first time in years, the Watch was losing so decisively. Under the cover of a smoke grenade I managed to throw, Victor, Ilara, and I, supporting a wounded Sophia, dashed for the exit. Diego and Jackson remained there, below. I didn't want to think about it. Breaking out onto the surface, beneath the icy rain and crimson moonlight, we heard a victorious howl behind us. It was different. Not just an animalistic cry, but something meaningful, triumphant. "What was that, Victor?" Ilara asked, gasping for breath when we reached the Cerberus. Victor slumped into his seat, his hands trembling. "I don't know, but they've changed. Smarter, stronger. As if someone is leading them." I looked at my hands, stained with blood and grime. The sense of failure was bitter as gall. Something had truly changed that night under the crimson moon, and that something boded ill for us and for the entire city. The hunt had just begun, and the rules of the game had clearly shifted. 3 days had passed since that slaughter in the subway. 3 days filled with reports, a debriefing that felt more like a wake, and a silence pressing on our ears in our citadel of shadows. That's what we called our headquarters, a high-tech sanctuary hidden beneath the massive old central library, with its Gothic arches and the scent of dusty tomes. The irony: guardians of knowledge above, guardians of the city below. We had our own archives, far more ancient and dangerous than any books on the surface, our own armory, laboratory, and medical bay. All of it now seemed useless in the face of a new, unknown threat. The losses were catastrophic. Of the 7 operatives who went on that ill-fated raid, only the 3 of us, Victor, Alara, and I, returned whole, along with a severely wounded Sophia, who was now fighting for her life in our medical bay under Doc Henderson's care. Jackson, Diego, Carter. Their names were now engraved on the memorial plaque in the Hall of Valor, a cold granite slab that grew longer every year. The atmosphere in the citadel was oppressive. Even the usually composed Victor looked defeated. He spent hours poring over city maps, trying to understand where we'd miscalculated, what we'd missed. Alara delved into her ancient texts, seeking answers in yellowed pages inscribed in long-forgotten tongues. As for me, I tried to squeeze the maximum out of the corrupted recordings from helmet cams and drone data, but each frame of that massacre only intensified the feeling of powerlessness. The werewolves acted as a single organism guided by an invisible conductor. Tonight was as dismal as that one under the crimson moon. I sat in the command center surrounded by shimmering screens, monitoring activity in the city. For now, it was quiet. Too quiet. It was even more unnerving. Detected anything? Victor's voice startled me. He had approached unnoticed, as always. In his hands, he held a mug of lukewarm coffee. Nothing, Chief. Not a single spike of anomalous activity. As if all the creatures had suddenly gone to ground, I said, rubbing my tired eyes. Maybe we gave them a good thrashing after all? Victor shook his head. I don't think so. They're licking their wounds and preparing. I can feel it in my gut. At that moment, a red dot flashed on one of the monitors monitoring the citadel's outer perimeter. A motion sensor near the service entrance, disguised as an old library freight elevator. Movement at the northern airlock, I reported, zooming in on the camera feed. The quality was abysmal due to rain and poor lighting, but I could make out a blurry figure leaning against the wall. Too small for a werewolf. Human? Alara approached us, her gaze riveted to the screen. Looks like it. A kid or a teenager? Alone? I said, switching to thermal vision. The figure emitted a steady warmth, but around it were colder patches as if from wet clothes. And also, red, hot smears on the ground. Blood. Open it? I asked Victor. Our security protocols were strict. No outsiders were supposed to know about the Citadel. Victor stared at the screen for a few seconds, his jaw clenched. How old do you think he is? Hard to say. 13? Maybe 15. About 5'4", 120 pounds, no more. I judged by his silhouette. He's injured and alone. On a night like this, Alara murmured, her voice full of compassion. We can't leave him out there. Victor nodded. Marcus, open the airlock. But stay ready. Take a couple of reserve operatives with you. Alara, you're with me. We met him in the decontamination chamber before the Citadel's main entrance. It was just a kid. 14, maybe. Skinny, soaked to the bone, in a torn Rock Band t-shirt and jeans. His light hair was matted with rain and blood. Blood was everywhere. On his clothes, his face, his hands. Part of it was clearly his. A gaping laceration on his left forearm, hastily bandaged with a scrap of cloth. But the rest, it was darker, thicker, inhuman. The boy trembled, either from cold or terror. His eyes, wide open, wildly darted around the room until they settled on Victor. He muttered, his words lost in the chattering of his own teeth. Fangs, eyes, in the darkness. They're everywhere. I stepped closer, my scanner already analyzing his condition. Multiple contusions, abrasions, laceration on his forearm possibly infected, no signs of lycanthropy detected, temperature 38.5 Celsius. Shock. I tried to sound dispassionate, but the sight of this kid, the sole survivor of yet another bloody massacre these creatures had orchestrated, made me sick to my stomach. Alara gently touched his shoulder. "Hush, boy, you're safe. What's your name?" He flinched at her touch, but didn't pull away. Alex," he choked out. "Alex, what happened? Who did this?" Victor asked, his voice surprisingly gentle. Alex swallowed, trying to focus his gaze. We were in the park, Riverside Park, by the old observation deck. There were 5 of us, just hanging out, and then they came out of the woods, huge, with burning eyes." He trailed off, beginning to tremble again. "Werewolves," I stated, though it was obvious. "The park? Their new hunting grounds? Too close to residential areas." Alara placed her hand on Alex's forehead. "He has a fever, and I feel something strange. A suppressed, distorted aura. Powerful." I looked at her with doubt. Alara often felt auras, but her face was particularly grim now. Victor made a decision. "Marcus, take him to the med bay. Doc Henderson will examine him. Alara, assist the doc. I want to know everything about this attack as soon as he can speak." He looked at me. "And check his clothing, everything he had on him. Every detail could be important." While Doc Henderson treated Alex's wounds and administered a sedative, I meticulously examined his belongings. Ordinary teenage clothes, a cheap backpack with a couple of comics and a dead phone. Nothing out of the ordinary, except for the smell. That same musky, bestial scent I'd noticed in the subway tunnels faintly but distinctly emanated from his jacket. As if he wasn't just a victim, but bait? The duty of the Watch is to protect the innocent. And this kid, Alex, definitely looked like an innocent victim. But something about his appearance here, right at the gates of our sanctuary, on this cursed night, stirred an unease I couldn't logically explain. As if by saving him, we had let something more than just a frightened teenager into the citadel. As if an invisible trail followed him, and along that trail those he so desperately fled were already coming. A chill ran down my spine. I looked at the sleeping Alex. "Who are you, kid? And why did those creatures want you so badly?" Alex spent the next 2 days in the Citadel of Shadows med bay. Doc Henderson, our man of few words but a brilliant surgeon and expert on all manner of supernatural contagions, managed to stabilize his condition. The wound on his forearm, though deep, was clean. Thankfully, not a werewolf bite, but most likely a glancing claw mark. But physical recovery was only part of the problem. Alex's mental state raised serious concerns. He barely spoke, only occasionally answering Victor or Alara's questions monosyllabically. Most of the time he either slept fitfully or sat on his cot staring blankly into space. Nightmares plagued him constantly. He screamed in his sleep, thrashed, fending off unseen enemies. Sometimes waking up in a cold sweat, he'd grab the notepad and pencil Alara had thoughtfully left on his nightstand and begin frantically scribbling on paper. The drawings were strange, disturbing, a tangle of sharp angles, spirals, and something resembling either distorted constellations or runic symbols. Some of them vaguely resembled the patterns we'd seen on the walls of ancient werewolf shrines. Alara spent a lot of time with Alex. She didn't grill him with questions, but simply sat beside him, sometimes quietly reading aloud excerpts from neutral books, unrelated to our grim reality. I watched her carefully studying the boy's drawings, copying them into her own notebook, her brows furrowed in thought. "He sees more than he says," she told me one evening when we met in the archive. The Citadel's archive was my least favorite place, a vast, cold hall, lined with shelves of ancient tomes, scrolls, and artifacts emanating centuries in hidden power. Ilara was in her element here. She spread several sheets with copies of Alex's drawings and an ancient star chart on a large oak table. "Look, Marcus, these symbols, they're not random. Part of them resemble runes from the Wolf Grimoire, a 7th century text describing rituals of werewolf lunar deities. And these are constellations, but they are arranged as they would only be seen during a very specific astronomical event. For example, during a triple lunar eclipse. Like our blood moons," I clarified. "The second such moon was due to rise over the city tonight." Ilara nodded, her face grim. "Precisely. I checked the Watch's chronicles for the past 500 years. A similar triple phenomenon only occurred twice, and both times it coincided with a significant increase in werewolf activity and the appearance of prophecies about a certain eclipse child." She opened a heavy, leather-bound tome, its pages made of parchment. The text was in Latin, but Ilara translated. "When 3 blood moons wash over the city, the eclipse child shall awaken. Its breath shall be a song of ending for some, and a hymn of beginning for others. The ancient stone shall show the way, and its blood shall be the key," she slowly repeated. This prophecy appears in several sources, with slight variations. All of them speak of a child whose birth or awakening is linked to this celestial event. A child who can either lead the werewolves to an unprecedented flourishing or become the cause of their demise. A chill ran down my spine. "You think Alex? He's this eclipse child?" "I don't know for sure, Marcus, but there are too many coincidences. His appearance at our gates on the night of the first blood moon, the pack attack that clearly wasn't just looking for random victims, his strange visions and drawings." Ilara picked up one of Alex's drawings, a complex symbol resembling an 8-pointed star with a dot in the center. "This mark, it's mentioned in connection with the Night Tier Shard, a legendary artifact that, according to lore, can greatly amplify the natural abilities of werewolves or anyone connected to the prophecy." While Ilara delved into ancient manuscripts, I was busy with more mundane matters, namely, fortifying the Citadel's defenses. My perimeter sensors began detecting strange activity. Not direct attacks, no. But shadows moved too fast on security camera footage. Sometimes security systems briefly malfunctioned without apparent cause. Thermal imagers detected short bursts of bestial heat in the sewage conduits adjacent to the Citadel's lower levels. They were probing us, looking for weaknesses and another oddity. I'd installed several additional sensors in the med bay near Alex's ward, just in case, and they registered anomalous electromagnetic surges whenever the boy became particularly agitated or had a nightmare. Small, barely perceptible, but they were there, as if his emotional state directly affected the surrounding space. I told Ilara about it. She merely nodded. If he truly is the Eclipse Child, his powers might be awakening. Unconsciously for now. The prophecy says his blood is the key. Perhaps his life force, his emotions, they are the catalyst. Connection to the outside world also started to glitch. Our encrypted comm channels, usually working like clockwork, became unstable. Static white noise. Attempts to contact our few allies in other cities were unsuccessful. We were isolated. Victor took the news grimly but calmly. Then we can only rely on ourselves. Double patrols on the lower levels. Marcus, check all weapon systems. I want every turret, every mine in full combat readiness. In the evening, as the second blood moon rose over the city, painting the sky in even more ominous crimson hues, Alex suddenly sat up in his cot. His eyes were wide open, but he was staring not at us, but through the walls. "They're coming," he whispered. The voice was quiet, but it held such certainty that it sent shivers down my spine. "They feel me." At that moment, the alarm sirens throughout the citadel wailed with a deafening roar. Motion sensors on all levels flared red on my monitors. The siege had begun. The second blood moon, a giant crimson eye gazing upon the city, seemed to drain all color from the world, leaving only shades of gray and blood red. Its ominous light permeated even the deepest corners of the citadel of shadows through rare disguised ventilation shafts, casting trembling, distorted shadows on the walls. Sirens were wailing, their sound mingling with a low, guttural growl that seemed to emanate from everywhere, from beneath the floor, from the ventilation, from the very walls. "Marcus, report?" Victor's voice boomed in my earpiece, overriding the chaos. I sat at my console in the command center, my fingers flying across the keyboard, pulling up the Citadel's tactical map on the main screen. Red dots, indicating the enemy, swarmed at all main entrances and even in some service tunnels previously thought impassable. "They're everywhere, Chief. Attacking simultaneously from 3 directions, the northern airlock, the eastern emergency exit, and damn it, even through the old water intake manifold on sub-level 3. How did they find it?" That manifold had been sealed 10 years ago and wasn't on any modern map. "Sounds like they got themselves a good guide," Victor grimly threw out. "Ilara, protective runes." "I've already activated all circuits, Victor, but they're different. Their aura, it's distorted, amplified, as if the moon itself is feeding them." Ilara's tense voice came through. She was in the central hall, where the Citadel's main mystical barriers were concentrated. On the security camera screens, a bloodbath was unfolding. The werewolves we saw tonight were even larger and fiercer than those we'd encountered in the subway. Their fur was inky black, their eyes burned not just crimson, but with some infernal violet fire. They moved with terrifying speed and coordination, smashing through steel doors as if they were cardboard. Our automatic .50 BMG silver bullet turrets mowed them down in rows, but 2 new ones rose for everyone that fell. But the most terrifying thing wasn't their strength or ferocity. It was their tactics. They used methods we'd never seen before. One group of werewolves hugging the walls emitted a low-frequency howl that even through my headphones made my ears pop. A few seconds later, half my monitors went dark, and the turret's targeting systems began to glitch. "EMP attack! Focal, it can't be!" I muttered, frantically trying to reboot the systems. Werewolves capable of generating a directed electromagnetic pulse with their voices? That was something out of nightmares, not tactical reports. Other creatures had learned to literally merge with the shadows. In one section of the corridor, I saw 3 of our operatives firing at what seemed to be empty space, and then 3 enormous figures leaped out of the shadows in the corners and tore them to shreds before they could react. Communication with the outside world was completely severed. Even our super secure satellite channels were dead. We were trapped in our own home. Alex was in the med bay, which was located in the very heart of the citadel, considered the safest place. Doc Henderson and 2 guards stayed with him. But even there, the rattle of battle and the howls of monsters could be heard. Periodically, I switched to the camera in his ward. The boy sat on his cot, huddled in a ball, his eyes wide with terror. And I again noticed a strange pattern. When his fear peaked, when he covered his face with his hands and began to tremble all over, the protective runes Ilara had placed on the medbay walls, which I could see through the camera thanks to a special filter, began to dim, their glow weakening. Once, when a particularly powerful explosion shook the citadel, and Alex screamed, one of the runes above his ward's door extinguished completely, crumbling to ash. But there was also the opposite. At one point, when another werewolf tried to break through the door in the corridor next to the med bay, Alex suddenly raised his head. His face twisted with a grimace of fury and despair. He screamed, inarticulate, furious. And at that very moment, the electronic lock on the door the werewolf was attacking short-circuited with a shower of sparks, and the creature itself was thrown back from the door as if struck by an invisible force. My sensors at that moment recorded a most powerful surge of electromagnetic energy emanating directly from Alex's ward. "Ilara, did you see that?" I yelled into the comm. "Yes, I felt it. It's him. His power is awakening, uncontrollably. The prophecy. Its breath shall be a song of ending for some and a hymn of beginning for others. He affects everything around him, our defenses and their attacks." Ilara theorized that Alex was somehow connected to the Night Tier shard mentioned in the prophecy. Maybe the shard isn't a physical object, Marcus. Maybe it's Alex himself, his potential, or something within him that's meant to awaken, something that can either amplify the werewolves to unprecedented levels or destroy them. It all depends on who uses it and how. The battle had raged for hours. We were taking casualties. Young watch operatives who hadn't smelled real gunpowder yet were falling one after another. Experienced operatives held their ground, but their ranks were thinning. Ammunition was running low. Ilara's defensive barriers were holding on by a thread. She herself was pale as a sheet, but continued to mutter her incantations, her hands trembling from the strain. Victor was everywhere, commanding the defense, firing his weapon himself, encouraging the operatives. But even his iron will seemed to be cracking. He knew we couldn't hold this siege. "Marcus, how much time do we have?" he asked when there was a short lull before the next wave of attack. I looked at the tactical map. The red dots were congregating again. 10 minutes tops. They're regrouping, and it looks like reinforcements have arrived. I detected new, even larger thermal signatures. Victor nodded. "Then it's time to initiate Plan Omega." Plan Omega. It meant only one thing: a breakout. Abandon the citadel and try to escape. But where? The city was swarming with these creatures. And most importantly, what to do with Alex? He was both our biggest problem and perhaps our only hope. The third, brightest, and most blood-red moon was already rising over the horizon, bathing the ruins of the library's upper floors in a ghostly, apocalyptic light. And I knew that with its rise, the most terrifying stage of this night would begin. The night that would decide the fate not only of the Citadel of Shadows, but of the entire city. Plan Omega was an act of desperation, a last chance to break free from the siege's iron grip. But before we could even think about a breakout, Victor and Ilara needed to understand who or what we were dealing with in Alex. The boy whose presence had transformed our unassailable citadel of shadows into a death trap could be the key to our salvation, or our ultimate doom. The citadel's heart wasn't the command center with its flickering screens, nor the armory filled with deadly toys. It was an ancient hall, located deep beneath the library's foundation, even deeper than our main levels. The hall was carved into the bedrock long before the city itself was built, perhaps even during the time of the indigenous American tribes who considered this place sacred. The walls were covered with strange bas reliefs and symbols that glowed with a faint inner light. Here, the Watch stored the most ancient and potent artifacts. Here, rituals requiring extreme concentration of power were performed. It was here that Ilara decided to bring Alex. Victor carried the boy. He was weak and disoriented after another surge of his uncontrolled energy, which had knocked out half the lights on our floor and, fortunately, a couple of attacking werewolves. I followed, covering them, my predator at the ready. Every rustle, every creak made me jump. Werewolves could be anywhere. The hall was cold. The air smelled of ozone and something else, ancient dust and withered herbs. Ilara lit several ritual candles arranged in a circle in the center of the hall. Their flames cast strange dancing shadows on the walls. "Place him in the center of the circle, Victor," she said softly. Her voice was calm, but I saw her fingers tremble as she took a pouch of runes and a silver knife from her bag. "Ilara, are you sure this is safe? For him?" Victor asked, carefully laying Alex on the cold stone floor. "Not entirely, but we have no choice. We must know who he is, what he is. Otherwise we are all doomed." Ilara knelt beside Alex, began to draw symbols around him with chalk moistened in some pungent-smelling liquid. "This ritual will help him, or whatever is inside him, to manifest. It won't harm him, unless the power within him proves too hostile." That's not very comforting, I thought, taking up a position near the hall's entrance. My thermal imager scanned the corridor. Clear for now. Ilara began to chant words in an ancient guttural language I didn't understand. Her voice grew louder, more confident. The symbols on the floor glowed with a vivid blue light. Alex twitched on the floor, his eyes rolling back. He began to murmur indistinctly at first, then more clearly. And then his voice changed. It became lower, deeper, with metallic, vibrating undertones. This was not the voice of a 14-year-old teenager. "When 3 blood moons wash over the city," Alex uttered in that alien voice. My blood ran cold. These were the words from the prophecy. "The eclipse child shall awaken. Its breath shall be a song of ending for some, and a hymn of beginning for others." Victor and I exchanged glances. This was it. The prophecy was coming to life before our eyes through this boy's voice. "The ancient stone shall show the way," Alex continued, his body arching. "The night tear shard, it's there, where shadow meets knowledge, where the blood of the ancients mixed with the dust of ages." "Where shadow meets knowledge," Ilara whispered, her eyes fixated on Alex. "It could be here, in the citadel, in this very hall, or..." Suddenly Alex screamed. It was a cry of pain and terror. His body began to tremble violently. The blue glow of the symbols around him flickered, becoming unstable. "What's happening?" I yelled. Someone is trying to break through to him. I feel an alien will." Ilara's face twisted with strain. She intensified her chanting, her hands glowing even brighter. And then I heard it. Not with my ears, but rather in my mind. A voice. Cold, authoritative, full of primal power. Child, you belong to me. Your power will be mine. Together we will revive our race. We will plunge this world into eternal night. It was him, the Alpha, the pack leader we now mentally called Morok. He was trying to establish telepathic contact with Alex, break his will, lure him to his side. Alex thrashed, moaned, his eyes wide open, reflecting inhuman terror. No, go away. Leave me alone. Victor rushed towards him, but Alara stopped him. Don't touch him. You'll break the circle. I have to protect him. She directed all her energy into creating a mental shield around Alex. I saw sweat stream down her face, the dark circles under her eyes deepening. The battle was not physical, but on the astral plane, and Alara was on the front lines. Morok's voice in my head grew louder, more insistent. Fools, you cannot hold him. He's our future, our glory. The Eclipse Child will fulfill its destiny. I felt a wave of primal fear trying to overwhelm me, paralyze me. I clenched my teeth, tightened my grip on my predator. Tech against magic and telepathy. The odds weren't good, but I wasn't going to give up.
Alara, hold on,
I yelled. Suddenly Alex fell silent. His body went limp. Morok's voice vanished from my mind as abruptly as it had appeared. The glow of the runes faded. Alara sank heavily to the floor, gasping for breath. He retreated, she breathed. But he knows. He knows Alex is here, and he knows the boy is the key. Victor rushed to Alex. The boy was breathing steadily but unconscious. Sweat beaded on his forehead. What was that, Alara? What does where shadow meets knowledge mean? Victor asked. Alara slowly stood up. I think the Night Tier shard isn't just an artifact. It's a part of his power, or something he needs to find to fully unlock his potential. And this place, it's either here, in this hall, or in some other place of power connected to ancient knowledge. She looked at the walls covered with bas-reliefs. Morok wants to use Alex for the ascension of the werewolves. That likely means turning the entire city, or perhaps the world, into his hunting grounds. We cannot let that happen. At that moment, my comm sparked to life.
Chief, Marcus, they've breached the second level. They're heading for the central elevator shaft. We can't hold them back.
It was the voice of one of the last remaining operatives. Victor looked at me, then at Alara and Alex. There was steel in his eyes. Talk is over. Time to get out of here. The breakthrough of the werewolves onto the second level meant that the Citadel of Shadows had virtually fallen. The central elevator shaft led directly to the command center, the archives, and most dangerously, to the ancient hall where we were with Alex. We had minutes left. We ran through the echoing corridors which had recently been the stronghold of our power, but now had become a deadly labyrinth. Victor carried the still weak Alex. Alara covered our rear, her hands occasionally flaring with blue light, pushing back particularly persistent creatures trying to block our path. I went ahead, my predator spitting short, precise bursts of silver bullets. Every shot counted. Ammo was critically low. Reaching one of the few surviving tactical posts, a small room reinforced with steel plates and equipped with an emergency generator, we barricaded the door. The rumbling outside didn't cease. The werewolves knew we were here. They clawed at the door, howled, their heavy bodies thudding against the steel. A tense silence reigned inside, broken only by Alex's ragged breathing and the static in our comms, the last remnants of communication with other surviving watch groups trying to reach the emergency exits. Too many of them, Victor, I said, reloading my last magazine. We can't hold out much longer here. We need to decide what to do with the kid. Alex sat on the floor, leaning against the wall. He was conscious again, but scared and disoriented. He heard our conversation, and in his eyes, I saw fear mixed with an expression I couldn't understand, either guilt or despair. And that's when the rift I'd feared began. There's only one way out that gives us a chance. My voice came out harsher than I intended. I looked at Victor. We have to use him as bait. Lure him into the open where Morok won't be able to resist taking him, and then ambush them there. It's our only chance to destroy the Alpha. If Morok dies, the pack will scatter. Ilara gasped. Marcus, you can't suggest that. He's just a child. He's the Eclipse child, Ilara. The key to their power or their downfall. We can't afford sentimentality when the entire city is at stake. I turned to Victor. Chief, you know this. We lost the Citadel. Lost almost all our operatives. This is our last stand. And we have to use every weapon we have. Victor remained silent for a long moment, his gaze heavy. He looked at me, then at Alex, then at Ilara. I saw the struggle in his eyes, the duty of a commander against human compassion. No, Marcus, he finally said. We won't sacrifice a child. Not like that. We are the City Watch. We protect the innocent. We don't use them as bait. But Victor, I began. It's not up for discussion. He cut me off. We'll find another way. Ilara, you said the Night Tear Shard is his potential. Maybe we can help him control it? Use his power against them? Ilara nodded, though uncertainty flickered in her eyes. Possibly, but it's dangerous. If we make a mistake, we could unleash something even worse, or kill him. We have to try, Victor said firmly. Alex, he turned to the boy. You heard. You're not just a victim. You have power. Power that can stop them. We'll help you. Alex stared at Victor with wide eyes. A flicker of faint hope shone in them. At that moment, the door shuddered from a powerful impact. The steel hinges groaned. No time for arguments, I yelled. They're breaking through. Indeed, the first dent appeared in the door, then another. A furious roar echoed from outside. We braced for battle. Victor stood by the door, his trusty Defender shotgun aimed at the opening. Ilara stood behind him, her hands glowing again, ready to conjure a protective barrier. I took up a position by the wall, trying to cover our flank. The door couldn't hold. With a deafening crash, it flew off its hinges and the enormous figure of a werewolf appeared in the opening. One of Morok's elite warriors with violet eyes and scarred skin. It roared and lunged at Victor. Victor fired. A blast of silver buckshot struck the creature in the chest, throwing it back. But immediately, two more appeared in the opening. A desperate fight ensued in the cramped space. Gunshots were deafening, the air filled with the smell of gunpowder and bestial blood. Ilara conjured a flickering shield that momentarily held back one of the werewolves, but the second broke through and lunged at her. I fired, but the werewolf was too fast. It swatted my bullet away with a clawed paw and was already raising its other one to strike Ilara. And then something incredible happened. Alex, who until then had been sitting paralyzed with terror, suddenly sprang to his feet. His eyes flared with the same violet light as the werewolves, but this light was purer, brighter. He thrust his hand forward and cried out, not from fear but from fury. Leave her alone. A wave of invisible force erupted from his palm. It was so powerful that the werewolf attacking Ilara was thrown back like a rag doll. It slammed into the wall with such force that plaster rained down and it went limp. The second werewolf trying to flank Victor also froze for a moment, disoriented, its violet eyes blinking in alarm. Victor took advantage and put a round into its head. A wave of energy passed over me too, but it was different. Not destructive, but rather tingling, like static electricity. My wrist-mounted tactical computer gave a short beep and rebooted. Silence fell in the room, broken only by our heavy breathing. Alex stood, breathing heavily, his hand still extended. The violet glow in his eyes slowly faded. Ilara looked at him with astonishment and fear. It's it, the power of the shard. It has awakened. I lowered my rifle. My pragmatism and cynicism cracked. This kid, he really wasn't just bait. He was a weapon. Dangerous, unpredictable, but possibly our only chance. Victor walked up to Alex and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You saved Ilara, son. You did good." Alex looked at him, then at his hands as if disbelieving what he had done. I don't know how. We'll teach you. Or at least try," Victor said. But I saw a new worry in his eyes. If Alex could wield such power so easily, what would happen if Morok still got his hands on him? "Night Tier Shard," Ilara whispered, looking at Alex. "It's not an object. It's him, his essence, or something growing inside him. And it's only just beginning to manifest." Suddenly a howl echoed from outside again. But this time it was different, a summoning, authoritative sound. The voice of Morok himself. "He's calling his hounds," I said, "and he's calling him." I nodded towards Alex. Looks like our little show didn't go unnoticed. Morok's howl echoed through the ruined corridors of the citadel, chilling us to the bone. It was not just an animalistic cry, but a command that seemed to vibrate the very walls. We knew what it meant. The Alpha wouldn't play cat and mouse anymore. He was coming for his Eclipse child personally. "We can't stay here," Victor surveyed our temporary stronghold. The steel door had been torn off, the passage blocked by the bodies of dead werewolves, but we knew it was only a temporary reprieve. "Marcus, is there a way to the emergency tunnels on the lower levels? The ones that lead to the old underground riverbed?" I quickly checked my tactical tablet, which had miraculously survived Alex's energy surge. "There's one service passage about 500 feet from here to the southwest. It's narrow and likely partially collapsed, but it's our only chance to bypass the main enemy forces." "Then let's move. Alex, stick close to me or Ilara. Don't fall behind," Victor commanded. Alex nodded, his face pale, but the panicked terror he'd shown earlier was gone from his eyes. The burst of power, saving Ilara, seemed to have given him a measure of confidence, albeit mixed with fear of himself. Our path through the citadel's ruins was a nightmare. Every dark corner, every turn could hide an ambush. Werewolves were everywhere, but now they acted more cautiously, as if wary of another burst of Alex's power. This gave us a slight advantage. We had almost reached the designated corridor when a shadow burst from a side passage. Massive, even by the standards of the monsters we'd been fighting. Inky black fur gleamed in the dim light of emergency lamps, and its eyes, they burned not with violet, but with an icy blue, almost white fire. An ancient, cold intellect gleamed within them. Morok. He didn't roar, didn't charge. He simply stood there 10 feet from us, blocking the way. His presence was so potent that the air around him seemed to thicken. Finally, his voice was not a growl, but a low, guttural human speech that sent shivers down my spine. He stared directly at Alex. "Eclipse, child, you've come to me. Don't you come near him, beast." Victor stepped forward, leveling his shotgun. Morok sneered, revealing rows of 2-inch-long fangs. "Watchman still trying to protect what isn't yours? He is our future. He is blood of our blood, spirit of our spirit."
"He's human," Ilara cried. Her hand rested on Alex's shoulder as if trying to shield him. "Human?" Morok slowly shook his head. "For now, yes. But his true nature is yearning to break free. Do you feel it, child?" His voice turned insidious, almost hypnotic. "They fear you? These humans. They want to use you, to control you. But I offer you freedom, power, belonging." Alex remained silent, but I saw him tremble. His eyes were fixed on Morok.
"Don't listen to him, Alex," I yelled. "He's lying." Morok ignored me. "Join me, Alex. Together we will be invincible. We will cleanse this world of weakness and vice. We will build a new order. Your father would be proud of you."
"My father," Alex whispered, his voice trembling. "You knew my father." The question caught us off guard. Ilara looked at Victor questioningly. We knew nothing about Alex's family. He had appeared out of nowhere. Morok nodded. "Oh yes, he was one of us, a great warrior, until these watchmen killed him." A lie. A blatant, brazen lie calculated to break the boy's will. But a flicker of doubt crossed Alex's eyes. Victor couldn't take it anymore. "Enough! You won't have him!" He fired. Morok moved with unbelievable speed. He swatted the buckshot blast away with his clawed paw as if it were a child's toy. Silver pellets ricocheted off his hide with a clang, leaving only faint, smoking scratches. "Fool!" he snarled and lunged at Victor. A clash of titans began. Victor, despite his age, fought like a lion. His shotgun became a club, deflecting the monster's attacks. But Morok was too strong, too fast. With one strike, he knocked the weapon from Victor's hands. With another, he threw him against the wall. Victor collapsed to the floor, groaning in pain. "Victor!" Ilara cried. Morok turned to Alex, his eyes once again burning with icy fire. "Your choice, child. Join me willingly, or I will take you by force." Alex looked at the fallen Victor, at Ilara trying to help their commander, at me, frantically aiming at the Alpha but afraid to hit my own. And something in him changed. The fear in his eyes was replaced by cold fury. "I won't go with you," he whispered. And then his voice strengthened. "You won't have me." He thrust his hand forward again. But this time it wasn't just a wave of energy. A beam of pure, blinding white light erupted from his palm. It was so bright I had to squint. The beam struck Morok directly in the chest. The Alpha howled, this time from genuine pain. His inky black fur where it hit smoked charred. He stumbled back, his icy eyes losing their certainty for a moment. What is that?" he croaked, looking at Alex with a new mixture of fury and respect. Alex stood swaying. White light emanated not only from his hand. It seemed to envelop his entire body. On his chest, where his t-shirt was ripped, a strange birthmark appeared, like a shard of dark glass, but now it pulsed with the same white light. The night tier shard, it was a part of him. But this power didn't come easy to Alex. I saw sweat stream down his face, his legs buckling. He cried out, not from fury, but from unbearable strain, as if his body was being torn apart. He's burning himself out," Ilara whispered. Morok seemed to recover from the initial shock. "You are strong, child. Very strong. But you cannot control this gift. It will destroy you before you harm me." He began to advance again, slowly but inexorably. "I will teach you. I will show you the true path to power.
He tried to break him not just physically, but morally. Tempted, promised, pressed on his most sensitive points. The heart of the beast against the heart of the human that was only just beginning to awaken in this boy. Victor, leaning against the wall, tried to get up. "Alex, don't give up. You're stronger than him." And I knew I had to do something. I couldn't let Morok get to Alex. Couldn't let this power destroy the boy. "Alara, get Victor and Alex out of here. To the tunnels. I'll hold them off," I yelled, stepping forward, placing myself between Morok and the others. "Marcus, no!" Alara cried. But I had already made my decision. This was my fight, my chance to atone for my cynicism, my initial desire to use Alex as bait. "Just go." I opened fire on Morok, aiming for his eyes, his maw, any vulnerable spots. The bullets ricocheted or only lightly wounded him, but it gave the others precious seconds. Morok roared, this time in fury at my audacity. He shifted his attention to me. "You chose death, human. I will grant your wish." And he lunged at me. Morok's claws sliced through the air where I'd just been standing. I rolled aside, instinctively moving out of the line of attack. My predator was useless against such speed and power in close quarters. I discarded it and drew my combat knife, a blade of Damascus steel, silver-laced with protective runes engraved upon it. It was a last resort weapon. "Run!" I yelled to Alara, who was trying to help Victor up, supporting the weakened Alex. The boy still faintly glowed, but the white fire in his eyes had almost faded. He had expended too much energy. Morok turned to me, his icy blue eyes narrowing. Brave little human, but foolish. He attacked again, a series of lightning-fast strikes with his clawed paws. I dodged, retreated, parried as best I could. Every block sent pain shooting up the arm holding the knife. Steel rang against claws, sending sparks flying. I knew I wouldn't last long. He was toying with me like a cat with a mouse. One of Morok's strikes found its mark. Claws ripped into my left side. The pain was sharp, searing. I staggered but held my ground. Blood gushed, staining my tactical jacket crimson. "You're already dead, human. You just haven't realized it yet," Morok snarled, advancing. "Maybe," I gasped, feeling my legs weaken, "but I'm taking at least a piece of you with me." I gathered my last strength and lunged at him, aiming my knife at his eye. It was a desperate, suicidal maneuver. Morok easily dodged and seized my arm in a steel grip. The bones in my wrist crunched. The knife fell from my fingers. Then came a blow to the chest. I felt my ribs crack. I was thrown against the wall. Darkness began to consume my consciousness. But I couldn't give up. Not now. I felt for the last smoke grenade with tear gas and silver particles on my belt. With a trembling hand, I pulled the pin and hurled it at Morok's feet. A pop, and everything was engulfed in acrid smoke. Morok howled in surprise and pain. The silver dust burned his eyes and lungs. This gave me a chance. Somehow getting to my feet, swaying, I lunged for the tunnel. Each step resonated with agonizing pain. I heard Morok's furious roar behind me as he was already recovering. I made it. Reaching the narrow crawl space, I squeezed inside and with my last strength collapsed the archway above the entrance, firing at the support beams with my pistol, which I always carried in my leg holster. The rumbling of stones, and the tunnel plunged into darkness. I was cut off. But Morok couldn't follow me this way. The tunnel was narrow, damp, and smelled of slime. I walked, stumbling, drifting in and out of consciousness from pain and blood loss.
I didn't know how much time had passed when I saw a faint light ahead. It was Alara and Victor waiting for me. Alex sat on the ground, breathing heavily. "Marcus, you're alive!" Alara rushed to me, her face twisted with worry. Victor, despite his wounds, helped me walk. "You're a true hero, son. You gave us a chance. Morok, he won't give up," I croaked. We emerged from the tunnels onto the surface in a completely unfamiliar area. A deserted industrial zone on the outskirts of the city. The rain had stopped, but the third blood moon, reaching its zenith, bathed everything in an unreal, spectral light. The city seemed deserted, but it was a deceptive silence. We heard the howls of werewolves. They came from all directions. They were scouring the city, looking for us. "We need a safe place," Alara said. "A place of power where Alex can do what he must." The prophecy said, "The ancient stone shall show the way." I think I know what that place is. The old observatory on Gryphon Hill. It's built on a nexus of ley lines, and in its foundation, there's a meteorite stone that local tribes considered sacred. Gryphon Hill. It was on the other side of the city, at least 5 miles away. On foot, with wounded, pursued by a pack of werewolves, the odds were negligible. "We won't make it," Victor said, his voice weak. He'd lost a lot of blood. "We have to," Alara replied firmly, and we walked. It was the longest and most terrifying night of my life. We crept through dark alleyways, hid in ruins, bypassed werewolf patrols. Alex, despite his weakness, held on. Sometimes, when danger was particularly close, his eyes would flare violet again, giving us a few precious seconds to hide. The power within him grew, but it was also consuming him. Victor grew weaker with each step. Near an old bridge over a dried-up riverbed, he fell. I can't go on," he whispered. "Leave me, go." "No, Victor, we won't leave you." Alara tried to lift him. "Alara, Marcus, take care of the boy." His eyes began to close. "Alex, make the right choice. Don't let them win." These were his last words. The heart of the city watch stopped. I felt an icy void fill my chest. Victor had been like a father to me. Alara cried silently, her shoulders trembling. Even Alex, this strange boy for whom we had done all this, looked at Victor's body with an expression of deep sorrow. But there was no time for grief. The howls of the werewolves were drawing closer. I slung some of Victor's gear over my shoulder, including his trusty shotgun. "We have to go, Alara. For him." We left Victor there by the bridge, a fallen warrior, and we moved on, just Alara and I, leading the boy in whom the fate of this city lay hidden. The observatory was already visible, a dark silhouette against the blood moon. But between us and it was an open plaza, and in that plaza, they were already waiting for us. Dozens of werewolves, and among them, Morok. "Looks like the end of the line," Alara whispered. I looked at Alex. He was staring at Morok, and there was no fear in his eyes, only cold, furious determination. "No," I said. "This is just the beginning." I knew I had to give them a chance. I was wounded, almost bled dry, but I still had strength for one last fight, for one last push. "Alara, get Alex into the observatory. I'll hold them off." I stepped forward, reloading Victor's shotgun. "Marcus, you can't." "I know what I'm doing. It's my duty. Go. Live." I didn't wait for her reply. With a battle cry that was more a roar of despair and fury, I charged the pack. I fired until I ran out of ammo. Then I fought with my knife, my hands, my teeth. I saw Alara and Alex run towards the observatory. I saw Morok hesitate, whether to go after them or destroy me.
The last thing I remember was the Alpha's snarling maw right in front of my face, and a searing pain tearing me apart. Then, darkness. But in that darkness, I managed to see the observatory door close behind Alex and Alara. I gave them a chance. That's all that mattered. Consciousness returned to me slowly, agonizingly, like a drowned man dragged to shore. First came the sound, a low, vibrating hum that made the ground tremble. Then, a smell. Ozone, burnt fur, and something else, sickly sweet, like overheated metal. And finally sight, blurry patches of light and shadow, gradually taking shape. I lay on the cold stone floor, amidst the debris of some equipment. Above me, through a huge hole in the dome, the blood moon gaped. I was in the main hall of the old observatory on Gryphon Hill. How did I get here? The last thing I remembered was Morok's fangs sinking into my flesh and an all-consuming pain. I tried to move. My body was pierced by 1,000 needles. My tactical jacket was ripped to shreds, soaked with congealed blood. But I was alive. Barely. And then I saw them. In the center of the hall, directly under the dome, stood Alex. He no longer glowed with that soft violet or furious white light. Now he was surrounded by an aura of pure, primordial energy that distorted the air around him, creating a shimmering haze like over hot asphalt. His eyes were completely black, without pupils or irises, and from them, it seemed, emanated the very darkness of space. Beside him, pale but resolute, stood Alara. She held an ancient rune-covered staff, one of the artifacts we hadn't managed to evacuate from the citadel. She was whispering something, directing the staff's energy toward Alex, apparently trying to stabilize or guide the monstrous power that had awakened in the boy. And opposite them, 20 meters away, stood Morok. He wasn't alone. Behind him huddled the remnants of his pack, the strongest, most ferocious warriors. But even they looked frightened, cowering together, their bestial snouts turned toward Alex with superstitious dread. Morok himself looked battered. His inky black fur was singed in places. A deep bleeding wound on his side, a trace of Alex's white beam, was visible. But his icy blue eyes still burned with cold fury and greed. "You've exceeded all my expectations, Eclipse Child." Morok's voice was hoarse, but still authoritative. "This power, it's magnificent, and it will be mine. You won't get him, nor this power, Morok," Alara cried, her voice trembling from strain, but not from fear. "The prophecy spoke of a choice, and he has made his choice." Alex remained silent. He simply stared at Morok, and in his black eyes there was neither hatred nor fear, only emptiness and boundless power. "Choice," Morok sneered. "Foolish woman, he has no choice. He is a weapon, and he will serve whoever is stronger, and that is me." He lunged forward, but not at Alex, at Alara, a cunning move to eliminate the one trying to control the flow of power. Alara cried out and thrust the staff forward, conjuring a shimmering shield. But Morok was too fast. His clawed paw struck the shield and it shattered into 1,000 fragments of light. The staff flew aside. Morok was already raising his paw for a fatal strike. And then Alex moved. He didn't step, didn't jump. He just shifted. In an instant, he was between Alara and Morok. His hand effortlessly intercepted the Alpha's clawed paw, gripping it with such force that bones crunched. Morok howled in pain and disbelief. He tried to pull free, but Alex's grip was iron. You're not just human," the Alpha croaked, his eyes wide with horror. "I am the Eclipse Child." Alex's voice was calm, almost devoid of emotion, but it carried the power of the universe itself.
And my breath is a song of ending, for you and yours." He raised his other hand. The energy around him intensified, becoming almost tangible. I felt the hairs on my arms stand on end, my teeth begin to ache from the pressure. Morok realized he was doomed. He tried to appeal to Alex's dark side, to the beast he believed slumbered within the boy. "Join me, we will rule together. Why do you need these humans? They are weak. They will betray you." Alex paused for a moment. Something flickered in his black eyes. I saw him look at Alara, then at me, lying on the floor. Something human, pain, doubt, flashed in his gaze. And then he looked at Morok again, and in his eyes, nothing remained but cold determination. "I choose them," he said, and from his palm erupted not a beam of light, but a wave of pure, all-consuming darkness. It was so dense it swallowed even the light of the blood moon. Darkness engulfed Morok, and he screamed, a long, dying howl, a mixture of pain, horror, and disbelief. His warriors, seized by panic, tried to flee, but the darkness caught them too, consuming them without a trace. When it was over, silence returned to the observatory hall. The darkness around Alex dissipated. He stood, swaying, his eyes normal again, the frightened human eyes of a 14-year-old boy. The aura of power around him vanished. On the floor, where Morok and his pack had just been, nothing remained, not even ash. Alex looked at his hands, then at Alara. What did I do?" he whispered. Alara walked to him and hugged him. "You saved us, Alex. You saved this city. I tried to get up, but my strength abandoned me." Alara noticed my movement. "Marcus!" She rushed to me. Alex followed. In his eyes I saw not only exhaustion but also deep sorrow. He had just annihilated dozens of living beings, monstrous as they were. That burden would stay with him forever. You did it, kid," I croaked, trying to smile. The blood moon began to fade. Dawn was breaking in the east. The night of terror was coming to an end. The city was saved. But at what cost? And what would become of Alex, the boy in whom power slept, capable of both destruction and creation? The prophecy had been fulfilled, but the story of the Eclipse Child, I felt, was only just beginning. Half a year had passed since that night, when the third blood moon washed over the city with its ominous light. Half a year since Alex, the Eclipse Child, put an end to the reign of Morok and his pack. The city was slowly recovering, licking its wounds, as was I. My bones had mended, but the scars remained on my body and my soul. The citadel of shadows was broken, but not utterly destroyed. Ilara and I, with a handful of surviving watch operatives, began to rebuild it, brick by brick, microchip by microchip. Alex, he had changed. The power that had awakened in him that night hadn't vanished without a trace. It lay dormant deep within, but sometimes broke free. In uncontrolled emotional outbursts, strange dreams, the ability to see shadows where others saw only emptiness. He became quieter, matured beyond his years. His gaze at times became as vacant and all-knowing as it had been that night in the observatory. People, even the few watch operatives who knew his secret, kept their distance, sensing something alien, frightening within him. He had saved them, but they feared him. A bitter irony. He became an outcast, a new watchman by circumstance. Ilara took him under her wing, becoming his mentor, trying to teach him to control his gift, to understand its nature. She spent hours with him in the salvaged part of the archive, studying ancient texts, seeking answers. As for me, out of old habit, I tried to find a scientific explanation for his abilities,
creating special devices for him to help contain or direct his power. Sometimes I felt like we were just trying to bottle a hurricane. The city was saved, but the victory was bittersweet. We lost too many, including Victor. His name was the first on the new list on the memorial plaque we installed in the rebuilt command center. Every time I passed it, I felt a pang of guilt and longing. Sometimes at night, when the city slept, Alex and I would go on patrol. Not like before, as a noisy team, but just the two of us. He learned to sense the supernatural long before my sensors picked up anything. He became our eyes and ears in the dark. His power was our most potent weapon, but also our greatest threat. We both understood that. He constantly balanced on a knife's edge between humanity and the abyssal power lurking within him. Once, standing on the roof of a skyscraper looking down at the city sprawling below, shimmering with millions of lights, Alex asked me, "Marcus, do you think I'll ever be normal?" I looked at him, at this teenager, on whose shoulders an unbearable burden rested. In his eyes there was a yearning that no child should have to bear. "I don't know, Alex," I answered honestly. "What even is normal? Especially for people like us. But I know one thing. You made your choice. You chose light when darkness called to you. And that makes you more human than many of those walking these streets below." He smiled faintly. It was a rare smile, and all the more precious for it. The night was quiet, but we both knew the darkness hadn't vanished forever. It merely lay dormant, awaiting its hour. And when it rises again, the Eclipse Child and his few allies will be ready to meet it. Because that is our fate. That is our city's harvest. An eternal battle on the edge of light and darkness, where the price of error is not only our lives, but the very soul of the entire city. And this battle had only just begun.